Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you leading off this edition. Lance Reisland will join us a little bit later to go over the film from that win over the Steelers. But we are going to start today by talking a little bit of Jim Schwartz. Ashley put up a big feature on the Browns defensive coordinator today. We're recording this on Tuesday, so you can check that out at cleveland.com/Browns. So let's just start here, Ashley, since this was kind of the reason we wanted to talk about him. Did you learn anything about Jim Schwartz and kind of writing this or talking to him?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaways that I think we kind of knew this to some extent already, and it's that he would be interested in being a head coach again. Now, the other thing we already know is he's a 59-year-old defensive coordinator. The deck is kind of stacked against him in that regard, right? We've talked about the league trending more towards these younger offensive-minded head coaches. But the thing that I was really interested that he talked about is what he would do differently this time. He hasn't been a head coach in more than a decade. His last time and only time was with the Detroit Lions from 2009 to 2013. And he talked about how knowing how not every head coaching job now is created equal. And I talked to him for like 15 to 17 minutes, and he probably spent like 5 or 4.5 of those minutes recounting season by season his time with the Detroit Lions. And he talked about how he had gotten to a point with the Lions where he took over after an 0-16 season, and they had turned things around so much that when they went 7-9 in 2013, 7-9 was fireable. And he wasn't only a couple years removed from a playoff berth, and they lost in the wild card. Now, where am I going with all of this? It sounds like a very familiar situation to me to what Kevin Stefanski is in now. And like this whole idea with Jim Schwartz is not all these jobs are created equal. Like these standards can be the same, but when you raise the standards so much, the landscape underneath you can change very quickly. So I think for me, it's this idea of he's open to other opportunities in the league, even though, they might not come for him. And he kind of, I think, more than most people understands where Kevin Stefanski is coming from. And he defended the record this season and a lot that Kevin has had to deal with. And talked about how these sort of personnel issues that they've dealt with have really impacted a lot of the season. And I think that also goes to show why there's not this overwhelming frustration on the defensive side of the ball for them this year.
Yeah, so Mary Kay, we talked about this a little bit on the HMK pod when we talked about Jim and those things that are working against him, right? Usually when teams go into coaching searches, the first place you start, right, is let's find that young offensive mind. And if you're not going to do that, you kind of find you start to look for kind of another young up and coming defensive guy a lot of times. And this year, for example, you're looking at, your Chris Shula's name a lot. He's 39 years old, DC for the Rams. Your Jesse Minter's name a lot. He's 42 years old, DC for the Chargers. If you're going to hire a defensive head coach, a lot of times you've got to sell it as here's this young upcoming name, this guy that, you're getting that guy right at when he's about to enter his prime as a coach in a lot of ways. That said, I mean, Schwartz is interesting for the Browns. If they move on from Kevin, could it be an option just in the name of stability? Like, here's a guy they've had in their building. I mean, if somebody's going to hire him, I would think the Browns would be the one place where you could sell that. I think it would be a harder sell than a lot of other places.
Yeah, probably would be a harder sell than a lot of other places just for all the reasons that we've mentioned. And the other thing about Jim is the fact that Andrew Berry loves him. He basically was instrumental they worked together in Philadelphia, and he was instrumental in having Jim come here. So he's a huge Jim Schwartz fan. And if they feel like they're going to part ways with Kevin, and we don't know if that's going to happen yet, I would think that would be something that they would possibly consider. And I've been on record for quite a while as saying that I think he would make an excellent head coach. I think a lot of times you're better off in your second stint than you were in your first because you've learned so many things the first time around, just about everything, how to deal with the media, how things play out, how to use the media sometimes when you need to, how to deal with players, how to motivate your players. So I think it would be something that they would possibly consider. We also talked about Tommy Rees, would they think about doing something like that? And, that was one thing I think we did talk about a fair amount on the HMK. I mean, would he be ready yet? Would they kind of go the Sean McVay route and try to do something a little bit outside the box? So these are just some things to think about. But then there's another avenue that you could think about or consider and ponder, and that is if you feel like you have a good offensive coordinator and you feel like you have a good defensive coordinator in place, why not just keep Kevin around as the CEO coach? Because they have those coordinators in place. And if you do decide to make a change, unless you, of course, go with a Jim Schwartz or a Tommy Rees, then you're upsetting the whole thing. And the defense is pretty darn good. Do you want to give up on that dominant defense that you have right now? I don't know about that. So they've got some big decisions to make.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing I keep coming back to is this idea of if you did go out and hire a new coach, are you willing to let Jim Schwartz walk out the door, even if it's not for a head coaching job, even if it's just, to go be a DC someplace else? I mean, he's been the one thing over his 3 years here that's been the most consistent. I do want to, so kind of going back to the whole idea of Schwartz getting his second chance. And Mary Kay, you've seen this kind of firsthand, right? Like you covered Bill Belichick in his first go round. Jim Schwartz worked for Bill Belichick, which I think is interesting. And then we see Belichick in his second go round become the greatest coach of all time, maybe, right? Like, I'm not saying Jim Schwartz is going to be the greatest coach of all time, but I'm just curious. Obviously, you didn't cover Bill directly in New England, but from your time covering him in Cleveland to what you saw in New England, did you see noticeable changes, or do you think the structure was just different or more set up for him to be successful?
Well, I think they did work very, very hard on a lot of different things once he got to New England. I think they worked with him a little bit more from a media standpoint. I think he did learn a lot of things from when he was here. But I also think he got Tom Brady. And I think when you have a quarterback, suddenly you can look like a much better coach than you did before you had quarterback stability. And that's another thing that I keep talking about with Kevin Stefanski. Someday, somewhere, somehow, I would like him to see what he can do with a stable quarterback situation and a quality starter that he feels he can win with. That's when we will know what he's all about. And some coaches, I guess, can win with a marginal quarterback, but the ones who are usually pretty successful usually have a really, really good quarterback. And so that's what the Browns are going to have to get to. It doesn't matter really who the coach is if they don't have a quality starter at quarterback. And so that's got to be job number one. No matter how you get to that guy, that's where you have to go. And if they don't do that, then you can cycle through all kinds of different things. You can cycle through coordinators and play callers and everything that you can possibly think of. And until you have a quality starter in that job, nothing is going to go right.
Yeah, so Ashley, you mentioned this kind of when you were talking about the story, and I found the quote here. Jim talking about Kevin saying, "I know this. Kevin is the same dude the first day of training camp as he is right now, and that helps everybody else, the whole coaching staff, to be able to do their job because he doesn't let the highs or the lows change his approach and his manner. It's been helpful for us." And I will say, like we do, I always joke about vibe checks and things like that on this podcast. When we're in a situation like this, I'm constantly trying to figure out when we hear people talk, when we see quotes from people, whether it's assistants, coordinators, whoever, I've been in situations where I'm sitting there and these podium interviews sound like job interviews for these guys. Like they know what's coming. I've got to say, seeing a quote like that from Jim and hearing him talk during the weeks, hearing coordinators talk, I'm not hearing guys necessarily positioning themselves to take Kevin's job or like be in a position where they're looking for their next job. Now that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but I just thought that was interesting that Jim, did praise Kevin so much and seems to really like working for Kevin. I just thought that was an interesting quote.
Yeah, and to like give some context behind that, the last two questions that I asked Jim in this interview was number one, would you want to be a head coach again? Would he do anything differently? And then my last question was actually the Kevin question. So I think there's some added interesting elements there of, hey, he kind of gave his little elevator pitch of putting it out there that yes, this is something he would be interested in, again, getting his name back out there in whatever way via the story. And then also kind of going to that defense of Kevin. So, like you said, it's not like he's gunning for the job here or doesn't like working for Kevin. And I do think there are so many times, and you guys have covered it more than me, obviously, throughout the years, and 1 in 31, and Hugh Jackson and Freddie Kitchens, where you can be covering a bad team and everything is just chaos. And even throughout the last 2 years, there have been some moments, and there's always a story with this team, but there's not been that overwhelming sense of, my gosh, this thing is being held together by a thread. I mean, even this year, you look at some of the other bad teams across the league, like what's happened with the Jets around the deadline, right? Or what happened with Miami. Now, Miami bounced back a little bit throughout the midway point of the season, but early on in the season and players only meetings and Tua calling people out. Look at what the Raiders put out there every single week, right? Like there are teams that have been in worse spots than this Browns team. And I definitely think Kevin is a big reason why there has been that sort of steadiness that Jim talked about.
Yeah, now I think what else is strange here, Mary Kay, is it's been so hard to get a read on exactly what is going to happen on Sunday night, Monday. I don't know. Maybe we get into the week a little bit. There's little things here and there that are circulating and things like that. But normally, I mean, I'm just thinking back to the Freddie Kitchens. We didn't have a firm answer, but like we kind of knew. And I remember sitting in that press box Sunday. That's the Sunday of that game. There were some Browns folks walking around who said some things. I was like, okay, yeah, this is happening. We're doing the one and done thing here. Chud, going all the way back to Chud when that went down. Hugh Jackson in the middle of the season, like you started to get that sense, and I do think that's one thing that's notable here is. It's hard to get a read on this. And, I don't know if that's good for Kevin or bad for Kevin. But I just do think it's interesting that going into this last game in Cincinnati, I don't think it's easy to say one way or another. I know there's a lot of people that want it to happen. There's also a lot of people that will pound the table to keep Kevin. And you've made a compelling case already as to why he maybe deserves more time. But does it mean anything to you that like we don't have a read on this? Is it still possibly in play that the Browns don't even know yet?
No, I don't think that's it. I think the fact that we haven't heard definitively that he's coming back,
Yeah, there's
that
that too.
I think it's up for debate. It's up for discussion. Maybe they've already made up their mind. Maybe they already know what they're doing. But the fact that we don't have an answer that he's coming back, that speaks volumes to me. The silence on that is deafening. So I think that it means that that there is something going on behind the scenes, just in terms of what they're going to do with him or not. And I think if he were coming back and they were able to come out and say, look, we've had 2 rookie quarterbacks. We asked him to win with a 3rd rounder. We asked him to win with a 5th rounder. I think we would have heard that by now. I think we would have heard something about that by now. And that doesn't mean he's 100% gone, but I think there are some discussions taking place.
That's kind of what I keep coming back to. Like you can't come out and say with 3 weeks left in the season, hey, we're moving on. But you could come out with 3 weeks left in the season and say, yeah, we're keeping Kevin around. And you certainly could do it on, the Tuesday before the finale. Like, hey, we're this season hasn't been as good as we wanted it to be. We still believe in Kevin Stefanski. I mean, we've heard the Haslams say things like that in the past. So Ashley, that's the thing that I kind of keep coming back to as well. Like they could, if they've made their decision, come out and say, yep, Kevin's coming back. There's nothing to lose here. I mean, their last game even is on the road. So it's not even like, angry Browns fans are going to not show up on Sunday or boo you all day Sunday. So that's the wild card in all this, that we haven't heard for certain that they want to bring him back.
It is. And I have now for like 24 hours been thinking about that Monday Zoom that we had with Kevin Stefanski. And look, he obviously got asked the questions about his job security, but Mary Kay put a headline on the one quote so people can go and read the full story about him saying it's been a privilege to have this job. And that quote to me is like, look, Kevin doesn't say anything, right? Like he typically doesn't answer anything about job security. And he mostly did that again on Monday and said, he's only focused on the Bengals. But I can't get that sentence out of my mind. It was very sincere. It was just this small crack, I think, that illuminates what we are talking about. That it's weird that there's not been an answer. And look, I think the other part of this weirdness, not to relitigate the bye week, but this being the first bye week we didn't hear from Andrew Berry, like that to me would have been the time. It was like about midway through the season, right? And I think that also is why we don't have some of those answers, though, because we didn't hear from the GM at like the one point in the season we typically do. And I think that would have been the chance to kind of set the tone with what they were thinking. So I think that is adding, really looking back on it now, like 7 or 8 weeks later, whatever we are, to the murkiness of the whole thing.
So just to kind of wrap this up then, I mean, Mary Kay, when we talk about potentially what the Browns could do, and when we talk about, okay, could they just make Jim Schwartz the head coach? Could they hire Tommy Rees? If they're going to fire Kevin and they just do the internal promotion, are they shortchanging themselves a little bit? Like, I feel like if you're going to make this move and you're going to potentially move forward with either Shedeur Sanders or a new quarterback, whether you trade up and get a guy, whatever happens there, do they kind of owe it to themselves and owe it to this fan base to like, let's do a full real search? And look, if it leads back to Tommy Rees, if it leads back to Jim Schwartz, fine. But I almost feel like if you're going to do this after 6 years with Kevin, you should just really open it up and just do the full. I mean, listen, we've lived through a million of these things. We know what it looks like. Just do the full coaching search. Just talk to everybody. See if there's college coaches that are interested. Just really cast as wide a net as possible to try and get this thing right.
Well, I do think that they should do that, but this is one of the most dominant defenses that we've ever seen, especially here in Cleveland. And I do think there is going to be something to be said for the fact that, look, the future is so bright with Carson Schwesinger and, and with Mason Graham and some of these young guys that they have here. And I just have to wonder, are they really, really going to want to change all of that? I don't know. I mean, this defense is incredible. So I do think they owe it to themselves to do a comprehensive search. I really do think that they owe it to themselves to do that. But I just have to wonder, how much change do they want across the board? And if they look at Tommy and they like what they're getting out of Shedeur because of Tommy, do what they want to keep continuity going in that regard too? So I don't really know what the thinking is, but yes, I do think that they should do a comprehensive search. I just have to wonder if they're going to want to let either of those two guys walk out the door.
Yeah, I mean that's fair too. And as you go through that search, that you kind of open yourself up to maybe losing, a Tommy Rees or something like that if they see the writing on the wall. So that could play into it as well. And to be fair, I mean after they fired Freddie, they did the search and they interviewed a bunch of people, and it did eventually come down to Kevin and Robert Saleh, but they came back to Kevin, who is the guy that some people in that building wanted in 2019 anyway. And again, maybe if it ends, it hasn't ended the way you wanted it to, but Kevin did some good things here. And, if we are kind of writing that Kevin in Cleveland obituary on Monday, we're going to look back and talk about some of the good things he did. So to that point, Ashley, like they did hire a guy they believed in 2020 that they had previously believed in. So the counter to the argument I made earlier of casting a wide net is, if you truly believe that you have a guy in Jim Schwartz or Tommy Rees or whoever, then hire that guy and just do it. Just get it over with if you believe that guy can win for you.
The other problem is, and we've talked about this before, and Dan, I think you alluded to it towards the beginning of this podcast, like most of the high profile names in this year's coaching carousel are going to be defensive head coaches. Like they are. It's going to be like a Jesse Minter or even like a Robert Saleh. Those are the kinds of guys that are going to be top of everyone's list. Now, if the Browns let go of Kevin, I think Kevin will be at the top of most other teams' lists at that point, which we've talked about. But my question is, like, to Mary Kay's point about this defense being so good, are the Browns prepared to do that and let Jim Schwartz walk? Because the other thing I keep thinking about from this story is the way that Myles Garrett talks about Jim Schwartz, and why it's significant to me is because we've known when Myles Garrett is not very content with his coaches or his coordinator, right? We've sat through him calling out Joe Woods, right? And Kevin having to talk to him about it. But when Myles talks about Jim, this is the quote from the story. He's a great coach. He's a great man of character and a great leader. So I appreciate the fact that I've been coached by him, and it has helped elevate my game and take it to the heights we've seen now. And then the beginning of that quote that I cut off, to play for Jim has been an honor and a privilege. Like, Myles Garrett doesn't heap praises on top of those people. And obviously Myles has been so successful in this system. The system is about to get him his second Defensive Player of the Year award, very likely. It's about to get him the NFL single season sack title. So that to me is what I keep coming back for. Like, Tommy is obviously a bit more unknown, but he does fit into that younger, offensive minded, do you think you have something here? Like, I think they're both worth holding on to. So are you prepared to blow either side up? And if you're not, it's kind of like, well, why do you go through a hiring cycle if you don't want to elevate one of those two guys and not give the new head coach coming in this sort of unilateral authority to bring in guys with him? So that is again like the argument for keeping Kevin. If you are happy with those two coordinators, why blow it up?
God, remember 2 years ago when we were talking about resting starters in week 18 and how far the Browns could go in the playoffs? Those were the days. Who knew how good we had it back then? Okay, we are going to take a break here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. When we come back, Lance Reisland is going to join us to break down the film. I'll let Mary Kay and Ashley go, and we'll be right back on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, and we welcome on, as we do every week, Lance Reisland to look back on the film from Sunday's game. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Dan. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. Okay, let's start. We always start with Shedeur Sanders. We will talk about Shedeur Sanders. Let's start on the other side of the football today, because obviously a lot of the talk has been about how the Steelers played Myles Garrett. Were they more concerned with Myles Garrett than winning the football game? I went back and watched the game. Obviously, you've watched it who knows how many times at this point.
More than I probably should admit.
Yeah,
Than I probably should admit.
We talked about it on the post game. Like, every team is concerned with stopping Myles Garrett. So I went back and rewatched. I didn't think it was necessarily more egregious than anything we've seen in the past. What did you think rewatching how the Steelers played him?
You know, it was funny hearing Myles when you guys were asking Myles questions. I didn't see it, right? And I will say this, I'm going to talk as an offensive coordinator. And I remember my dad saying as we watched film, you can't let a guy like Myles beat you. Now, what I think the Steelers did, I thought they were fantastic. They made sure that happened. There was plays there to be made that Aaron Rodgers missed. And I think that really comes down to the Browns had a really good plan. Campbell and Ward were much better than the receivers of the Steelers. The Browns were going to let them throw the ball underneath. They were going to rally and tackle. They were going to assume that they were going to win on vertical balls. And they were going to continuously see if he would continuously be patient. And he wasn't. And the fourth down and one throw, he's got a crosser that's wide open. And on the last play of the game, he's got a crosser wide open. So those are things you do as a defense. So no, I don't think. In fact, as an offensive coordinator, I thought it was a great plan. I thought they stayed attentive, attention to detail oriented. Always chipped him, go away from him, quick screens, run right at him, give him just a plethora of stuff, and never ever forget that one play. And that's what they did. And I don't think it was more at all. I thought it was done to a very high level, and the Steelers were going to, make other people beat them, and the Browns were up for the, that's what's good about this Browns defense. There's other really good players on this defense, and other players beat them. So, no, I do not. I disagree, and I'm even going to disagree with the guy Myles, which I usually don't disagree with, and for sure would never disagree to him if we were standing next to each other. But no, I just don't. I just think you have to, as an offensive coordinator, you can't let that guy wreck the game. He's one of the few guys in NFL history that can absolutely wreck a football game, win it by himself.
So I'm glad you brought up that last play because, obviously they attacked Denzel Ward on that play. I don't know why they were throwing to Valdez Scantling as much as they were. I don't get it. But on that last play, Gainwell was wide open. And, is he going to run into the end zone or not? I don't know. You just never know. But like it had gotten to the point where whatever Carson Schwesinger did at halftime had worn off by that point in the second half. So he was struggling to move. uh, I think Gainwell might have been able to get in on that play with a wounded Carson Schwesinger potentially having to close that gap. So yeah, I thought some of the choices Aaron Rodgers made on Sunday were, I guess we'll just call them interesting.
Well, even the one he hit the Freiermuth. The Freiermuth is like that's the part that gets you excited if you're an Aaron Rodgers fan. That was like 10 years ago. Aaron Rodgers, they were in a cover two, man underneath. Delpit's in great coverage, and Aaron Rodgers just absolutely throws a dot that no one could do anything about. It was from three strong, really nice throw. But there was a number of throws. Like I said, the 4th down and 1, he misses a crosser. And what that does, it goes to show you, even Hall of Famers, top 5 quarterbacks of all time, like Aaron Rodgers, whether you think so or not, is in that argument. So if he's in the argument, it's hard to stay patient all game. It's hard. So when people always say, I remember when I was calling plays, people would be like, why don't you just throw that over and over? And you go, yeah, why didn't I? Because, it was open. You almost overthink yourself. And if he would have just taken what he had done all day, he had Gainwell on the last play of the game, but he also had a crosser earlier in the game. He also had a bunch of other ones that he just, for whatever reason, almost had it pre-snap, decided what he was going to do pre-snap. So I just thought the plan was great for the Browns. Browns said, we're sticking to our plan. And if you could beat us, great, but we don't think you can. And they were right. They bend a little bit more than they usually do. But I think that was important when you face a guy like Aaron Rodgers. You have to know that he's going to make a couple plays.
So I want to talk about another guy on that defense that we haven't really talked a ton about, but he had a really good game on Sunday, and I think he's been really good all season, and that's Tyson Campbell. We saw him make some plays. I love how physical he is. He's going to stick his nose in there in the run game. I've just been really impressed with everything I've seen from him all season. And I thought Sunday was a really good example of what he can do.
Well, when they brought him in, so I like Greg Newsome too. So, but I think Greg Newsome is a much better zone corner than he is a man corner. He just doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the lateral quickness, the short area burst. Tyson Campbell does, and Tyson Campbell also has flat, raw out speed that made him such a high priority when he came out of college. So, his ability to cover. But I agree with you. The thing that I did not have in my evaluation is his toughness. And if you look into next year, what it does is that Emerson comes back, and if Emerson is completely healthy, you have a choice there, who can play inside on that nickel, because they're both so physical. Now, if he comes back and he's not doing, he's not quite moving like he did to be an outside one, then Emerson's an awfully big slot corner that can run with, even next year, can run with tight ends and backs and then play that extra backer and nickel. So that was a really good pickup. Things like Malik Collins, Campbell, but Campbell is just such a scheme fit for the Browns. Great. He's been outstanding. And I'm with you, Dan. His physicality has been very, very impressive. Willing to stick his nose in there, something coaches love.
And then let's spend a little time on a guy that we have talked about a lot, and that's Carson Schwesinger. And I mentioned it. I was shocked, like how much he was struggling on that final drive of the first half. I'm surprised they even had him on the field during that drive. And then again, I think as the second half wore on, as we got to the end of the second half, you started to see again, he was really struggling to move out there. But it kind of speaks to him and sort of the guy he is, that he was out there. And of course, Kevin Stefanski gives him the only game ball after the game. It really speaks to the kind of player he is and what he means to this defense, that he was out there playing through, whatever that thigh injury is.
Well, it's interesting because they started attacking him, and it's like, you always think about, and you watch those wildlife shows when an animal is injured, there's no mercy, right? And that's how it is in the NFL. That's how it is at every level of football. I remember when somebody get banged up, you don't want anybody to be hurt, but if they're going to stay out there, you're going to test them. And I thought for sure Aaron Rodgers, the way he was moving, I thought they were just going to attack with Gainwell and tight ends, would find him in man coverage. And, and it was really easy to find him in man coverage because they were tripping so much. So if you watch the film again, every time Gainwell goes to the edge, Schwesinger will widen a little bit when he's in man coverage. And I thought for sure when Aaron Rodgers saw that, it was going to be just a plethora of swing routes and Texas routes and checkdowns and just make him tackle in space. It does speak, especially since the Browns over the last couple of years, I wanted them to be more physical in practice, and everybody. I love Kevin Stefanski's practice. I will stand by that. Organized, sense of purpose, pace, but they're not super physical. And when guys are banged up just a little bit, they usually get the day off, and that's what I've noticed over the course of 4 years. So, him being out there speaks to him, speaks to Kevin Stefanski wanting to win that game. It kind of speaks to his toughness, like you're not taking me out of here. And sometimes in football, you make emotional decisions, which is not always good. But a guy like Schwetzer just says I can go, and as a coach, sometimes you, whether it's right or wrong, you go then. And I've been in those situations where you look back and you go, yeah, that was my fault, or I'm glad he stuck in there. But it just speaks to his toughness and kind of what the Browns are kind of been missing with that. We'll do whatever it takes to win. So very impressive. That young man has been impressive. I'm doing a post on him, just kind of waiting until the end of the season now, and the stuff he does from sideline to sideline in the tackles, coverage wise, man, zone. It's super impressive. He's only going to get better.
Well, and Harold Fannin too. Obviously, he had to leave that game. But he suffers that groin injury in practice on Friday. Says he's going to play. Gets out there and plays on Sunday. Scores a touchdown, and then ultimately has to leave the game with that injury. But the fact that he got out there and played in a game that didn't mean anything for the Browns, for a rookie, a guy who has a super bright future ahead of him, again, I think that speaks to the player he is.
Yeah, and then he makes a big play. And it's funny because with Shedeur Sanders, everybody for me lives in the extremes. He's either a guy who is going to be all pro next week, or he's a guy who can never play, could not play on an 8th grade Pee Wee team. And the reality is it's kind of in the middle. And he's he's done a lot of really good things. But there's a classic example because the people who love Shedeur say it was just an amazing throw. It wasn't. People who hate Shedeur say that was a terrible throw. It wasn't. For me, it speaks to Harold Fannin being out there, your receiver making a play for you when you get hit. Just like, sometimes the receivers drop it. Sometimes there's not pass protection. Sometimes, everybody's kind of involved. And those guys getting out there just showed they pick each other up. And there's been times where Shedeur Sanders has thrown a great ball and Fannin has dropped it. So in the end, when you're a team and your culture is what it is and you want to win, those things usually equal out. And that's what happens when guys like Fannin say, I'm going to go out there and play. So I thought that was, I'm with you. I thought that was huge mentally, in the idea that we're in a game that means nothing for us, but it means something to us in the locker room. So that was very cool.
All right, so let's talk about Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, the first part of that game, those first few drives, looked really sharp. But then, of course, look, he has the first interception, gets hit, ball hits a helmet. Even Kevin Stefanski called it unlucky, but that gets canceled out by the throw that Herbig dropped. And then the throw to Judy, right? Those two plays, the throw that Herbig should have picked sixth, and the interception to Judy, and there were a couple scrambles too. That felt like Colorado Shedeur Sanders. That felt like the stuff when we were talking about him in the draft that was like, you can get away with this at Colorado. You're not going to be able to get away with this in the NFL. And I think we had a couple of those moments on Sunday.
Yeah, if you ask me what he needs to work on moving forward, it's a catastrophic mistake. So, as an offense coordinator, I didn't base things on numbers. I used numbers to help with feel. And one of the things I would always say is you only get between 8 and 12 possessions a game. So that ball is life. So he can't be so kind of loose with the football, and he's got to make sure he doesn't have those catastrophic mistakes. Because if for example, they had 11 possessions in that game, and 3 of them were, the one wasn't his fault, but Herbig should have been a pick, and then the pick. So those, 3 out of 11 times the ball could have been in the other team's hands. That's just something he's got to work on. Now, once again, that's why I've enjoyed them letting him play through this, is that he's going to have those things. And from his footwork to checking the ball down to using his feet to get first downs, those things have all improved. The next thing is live to fight another day and not put your team in a bad situation. And once again, I think you're right. Those are things he got away with in college. They just you can't do those things in the NFL. And it seems like in the NFL, you always pay for those things big time. So once again, a lot of good and less and less bad. Let's say that. And unfortunately, the few things he's doing wrong are really bad. So he's just got to clean those up. And that's why this game is important again this week. They're 4-12, but this is a big game this week, in my opinion.
Well, and I think there's some operational stuff that needs to get cleaned up too. We don't talk to Tommy Rees until Thursday, but there was that clip where he was kind of pounding the table out of the 2 minute warning, and something was happening there. Like you cannot burn a timeout out of the 2 minute warning. Like that can't happen. And something happened there operationally where Shedeur didn't hear the like he needed Tommy to call the play back down to him, and Blake Whiteheart was kind of he didn't know what to do. So I'm curious what Tommy's explanation for that'll be. I still think there's moments, Shedeur had a scramble. It was like an 11-yard scramble on a 3rd and 17. I don't remember the exact down and distance. It was not a first down scramble, I'll put it that way. He gets up and flexes, and I'm watching the play clock and I'm watching like him needing to get back to the huddle, and he kind of just didn't get back in time. And he got lucky because they reset the play clock for him. But that's been something that even Joel Bitonio has talked about publicly. Like he's, he's got to get to the point where he's getting into the huddle and getting that play called, and he understands the clock and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of little things like that too that need cleaned up. And I think we have seen improvements in those areas, but it just speaks to how holistic it is with Shedeur Sanders, how raw he really was in all of this.
Well, yeah, and it's one of the things. I've said this a bunch is that a lot of it comes down to at Colorado they had no pass protection. Pat Shermer's a pro coordinator. How do you handle lack of protection? You got to get rid of the ball in under 2.8. So there's a lot of times they were single reads, high lows, things like that because he had to get rid of the football. And then again, Shedeur has always been the entire show. He grew up that way. He was the show in high school. Jackson State, Colorado. He was a guy, and that's when you're the guy all the time, you things kind of now he's on a team where he's part of a team. And in the NFL, everybody's kind of part of the team more than you are, especially in high school, but even college at that level. This is one guy does something wrong and the play is blown up. Everybody's got to be on the same page all the time. And, does he understand personnel groups that go with plays yet? Does he understand all the run checks? Probably not, but you can tell he's canning some plays and he's getting to second plays and things like that. I just think for me, part of the issue is that there's no room. Everybody lives in the extremes with him. And when you live in the extremes, you can't judge. It's hard to have a clear eye to what he's doing. I think he's done a great job. As a person who likes Shedeur Sanders, but also as a person who likes Dylan Gabriel as well, I think Shedeur has done a great job of being impactful and learning. But there's a lot left to do for all rookie quarterbacks, but especially one that comes from a system that there was no pass protection and you had to get the ball out.
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole offseason and this whole how they approach this so interesting is it's very clear that he needs more time, but how much more time? And then how much more time do the people making that decision have? Like there's just, there's a lot of complications. This is to your point, this is an instant gratification league in a lot of ways. And we'll see. We'll see how much time the Browns are willing to give him, I guess.
Well, and it's going to be interesting as you and I talk next week, right? And we're talking as we get into the draft process that you and I have for the last couple of years, and we get into like what they need, and does that change? Because the quarterbacks that I have high on the board are quarterbacks that fit Kevin Stefanski's scheme, and do they have faith in Jerry Judy? Like there's a lot of things that come if there's a brand new thing that changes. That changes a draft process, and do people have faith in Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel, or do they say, you know what? A lot of times when you get new organizations, new men in charge, they want their own GM, they want their own head coach, they want their own quarterback. Things like that happen. So I'm with you. It's going to be interesting. Obviously the talk next week, unfortunately, which is where the Browns have to get away from, the talk next week will not be how they finish against Cincinnati, but what's happened with their coaching staff and moving forward. So it'll be Dark Monday or Black Monday, whatever you want to call it, is not going to be somebody's probably going to have to go. But I think it's all or nothing. If you ask me, that's what I would do.
All right, let's change gears here. Let's have a little fun.
Yeah, this is on you today. I like this out of you today, Mr. Labbe.
Yeah, so we were gonna do New Year's resolutions, and then I come to find out that you are like me. You are not a big resolution guy. I don't really make them.
No.
Sounds like you don't really make them. That's fun. Look, if you're out there and you make resolutions and it helps you be a better person and helps you accomplish your goals, have at it. We are not big resolutions people. So we decided to bag that. and we thought we'd do, and I don't know if we've done this before, but I don't really care. We're going to do it again. We do overrated holiday traditions, because again, I think you, like me, like not a big New Year's person. It doesn't do a ton for me. It's fine. We hang out at my house, we eat some appetizers, whatever, watch some football, but it's not like I'll be working on New Year's Day, and it's not, I mean, I've worked a ton of New Year's days. Like, it just doesn't feel like I'm working on a holiday that day. So I don't know. I think you're kind of with me on this. Like,
Absolutely.
New Year's kind of is, whatever. It doesn't do a lot for me.
Oh, I couldn't
So,
agree more. Do I get the first pick today, Mr. Labbe?
do you want the first pick?
Yeah, I want
You
the
know
first
what?
pick.
Yes, because I came up with it. You can have the first pick.
All right. Well, I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with the whole process of New Year's. And you and I talked about this earlier, and we definitely feel the same. Number one pick without question for me is the ball dropping at midnight. And
Yeah.
especially as I've gotten older, that's just really, really, really super overrated to me. I'm once again, I'm working a lot now on New Year's Day as well. So I'm not into the ball dropping, because that means I'm up till midnight, and I don't make it to midnight very often. So that's an overrated one for me.
It's tough. It's tough. And by the way, am I wrong on this? It used to be an apple, right?
I believe
Didn't
it
it
used to
used
be
to
an
be a
apple.
big, like a lighted up apple? Like, now that was something when it was the apple.
I do.
dropping.
You're not as old as me, but yeah, the apple was like, but then once again, as I've gotten older, it's gotten less and less meaningful. New Year's, I'm not going out. I'm not doing all that stuff. We'll have a good, we're like you. Exactly. We'll have a couple things to eat, hang out for a little bit. We'll do some family stuff, play some games and stuff like that. But nah, the ball does nothing for me anymore.
Sometimes we fire up Mario Kart.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do that. Yeah. Okay. Ball drop goes number one. Okay. So my number one pick, this is definitely something that I have railed against in the past. Parades.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Parades are way overrated for sure. I used to like the St. Patty's Day parade back in the day when you would
Well,
go
that's
down.
different. That's a little different.
But there's only an age range, and everybody knows what we're talking
Yeah.
about there. But there's an age range there. But that was fun for a while. But yeah, I'm with you.
It's hard. It's hard to find parking. You got to walk there. It's usually a summer day, like it's 4th of July, or even like if there's a Memorial Day parade or something, like it's hot. And it's just, really just going to sit here for 2 hours and watch people walk by. Like, I'm out on parades.
All right, this is an interesting one for me. This is a little different take, but I'm gonna go with mandatory fun. I'm gonna go with
just generally speaking.
But we're gonna go, like, me and my wife and my daughter, we love like Christmas lights, but we like that. Like, we like Christmas lights. We like to go see
Okay.
lights. But like, if you don't like Christmas lights, but you say you're with your significant other and they like Christmas lights, you got to go. So you're forced into their fun. And so all holidays, fireworks, things like that. So, it doesn't, fun within your family is good. Like, we like our traditions, and we always say in our house, we love being with us three and things like that. But some people have those huge families and they're forced into fun. So I'm going to go with this general, like, mandatory fun. You will have fun, and you will like it.
Okay. All right. If we have done this one before, I know we haven't done this specific thing, but since we're in the holiday season, this is one that popped in my head. And thankfully, my kids are older. We don't have to do this anymore. Going to see Santa.
Oh yeah, especially when they're little and you got the multiple bags. You always got I had a diaper bag, my wife, the whole process. Yeah,
You gotta, and then you're just waiting in line forever. And freaking Santa's at everything. So it's like you go to the zoo and Santa's there. Now we got to see Santa. You go to the mall, Santa's there. You got to see, and it's a scam. It's an absolute scam. Like, I've got a camera on my phone. I can take a picture of my kid.
Probably better picture.
Yeah. I don't even think they let you do that anymore. I think you have to buy the picture if you want a picture with Santa. It's just, I was so happy when we aged out of that. That was like one of the best days of my life, going to see Santa.
So, all right, for my last pick, this is a kind of a one that you get at school as a lot as a teacher, but ugly sweater stuff, parties, and just like wear it to school, and all the different ugly sweaters with the Griswolds, and just the whole Too much. I'm not into the ugly sweater, everything.
Well,
I'm just not.
it went corporate. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's too much.
It was like people started. It used to be, hey, I went to Goodwill and found this ugly sweater. Ha
Yeah.
ha ha. That's funny. And now it's like you go and you actually just buy ugly sweaters.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
know that.
it's a thing
And
you just buy at like Old Navy or something.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, stylish, and it's like a lot of them will say, my ugly sweater, like, I just, I'm not like I'm old, so if I bust out a sweater that at one time I thought was appropriate, and now
Right.
it's ridiculous, that's fair, that's acceptable.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The ugly sweater thing has gone too far. Too far.
All right, your last pick, my friend.
Okay. My last one. I've got two on my board still. Okay, so I've done one of them before. I'm going to go with does this count as a holiday tradition? I'm going to go with Black Friday shopping.
Oh yeah, especially going at like 4 a.m. And
Yeah.
I've been with my wife for 26 years, and we used to do the get up at 3 o'clock or whatever it is. So yeah,
Oof.
that's now with Amazon and all that kind of stuff. Like you don't need any of that stuff. Like that's a good one.
And I know people who love to do it still. Like it's just something they do, and it's like a social event. They get together with friends that they see every year. I get it. I understand it. Good for you. I'm not into it. I have never wanted to Black Friday shop. You don't even get to see the fun like fight videos anymore. Like that used to at least be a highlight. You could see some fight videos or whatever at Target or Walmart or something, but you don't even see that as much anymore.
Do you have any traditions that you wish could bring back that are gone now as you're older? Anything you want to bring back? Like so, we talked about like overrated one. Is there one that's out there that you'd like to bring back?
I've got a football related one.
I do too. That's mine too.
I think New Year's Day. I think just like New Year's Day used to be like college football bowl day, and like
that's
it's just
mine.
not it's not the same anymore.
That was mine because my dad who had passed a couple years ago, that was like the day, right? You got up, the first game was on at 11, and then you watched them all day. 5 o'clock was always the Rose Bowl, but there wasn't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I watch every bowl game, and I think the smaller bowls are even more awesome because those guys are playing even harder. But the idea that all your bowls were in one day. And if you had to watch
Yeah.
them, you weren't rewinding or anything like that. You had to sit there and watch. That was exactly mine. That's funny. Because it's
Yeah, I
like
mean, we've just sort of have lost that,
that
you
luster,
know.
right? Then the
Like the
playoffs.
playoff is fun and all that, but like having bowl games and when it used to be the weird championships, right? Like
Yeah.
it was maybe there was a championship game or maybe the number 1 and number 3 team were playing and then the
Yeah.
winner of the Rose Bowl could maybe win the national title.
And
Like
how much do they win by? And they're
it just
impressive,
yeah. It just felt different when New Year's Day was like the fulcrum of the college football postseason.
Yeah, we used to do in my family. Obviously, my dad being a coach for 45 years, and that's how I grew up. That was a big day in my family. That was a like food and friends over and coaches. It was a huge day in the Reisland household. That went away, and I wish it didn't. I say that to my wife all the time. I love the bowl games. There's 3 on today that I get to watch while I'm doing stuff. But that New Year's Day, getting up, is something I miss for sure.
Well, and they were like the real bowl games too, right? Like you still had the weird outlier bowl games, but like the real bowl games,
Yep.
like it was Rose Bowl, it was whatever, the Fiesta
Yep.
Bowl and all that. Like it was the real bowl games were New Year's Day. Like that's when you knew, hey, we had a good year. We're playing
Yeah.
on New Year's Day.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that's the one I miss for sure too.
All right, fair enough. Okay.
Well done,
I
Mr.
think
Labbe.
that'll do it.
Finished up the year strong with questions. We'll be back we'll be back next year with questions. But well done, my friend.
We'll have to do some in the off season.
Yeah,
too.
we'll bring some up in the offseason. I agree with you. We don't have to wait a whole year. Those are fun.
All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast on YouTube or Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, just search for Orange and Brown Talk podcast. You will find us there. Leave us reviews, say nice things about us. We always like that. And of course, Football Insider, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. We are getting into the offseason. We could be getting into coach search season. So you'll want to be subscribed to Football Insider to get texts, newsletters, get access to those stories behind the paywall. All that stuff is that blue banner at the top of the page at cleveland.com/Browns. You heard from Mary Kay and Ashley earlier. That was Lance. I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.